Welcome to Lead Different.
What happens when your business grows, but your brand stays stuck in the past? On this episode of the Lead Different podcast, we're joined by Lindsey Binion, founder, CEO, brand strategist, and designer, to explore what it means to rebrand with purpose. With more than 17 years of experience, Lindsey helps faith-driven founders align their brands with their mission, clarify their message, and create a foundation for meaningful growth. In this conversation, she shares why branding is about much more than logos and colors. It's about trust, consistency, stewardship, and communicating your value in a way that truly connects. If you've ever felt like your business has outgrown its branding, this episode will help you understand how intentional branding can support stronger leadership, deeper impact, and long-term success. Subscribe and join us as we discover what it means to lead different with Lindsey Binion. Let's dive in.
Why not leadership? Why not lead different?
Welcome to Lead Different, the podcast that redefines leadership and challenges the status quo. Hosted by Daniel Dominguez, founder and CEO of Why Not Leadership. This show is your compass to becoming a better leader through the power of self-awareness. Good leaders foster teams that are engaged, empowered, and energized. Join us on this transformative journey as we equip you with the tools and insights to lead different. Get ready to challenge the ordinary and embrace self-aware leadership. This is Lead Different.
Subscribe now. Discover a new era of leadership. Lead different because great leaders change the world.
Lindsey, welcome to the show. It's so good to have you on the Lead Different podcast. How are you doing today?
Good. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for being on. You know, as I was reading through your bio and reading through all the amazing things you do, I couldn't help but be impressed. I've had an opportunity to sit through your presentation about what you do for brands and what an important role that plays in how we market ourselves, how we market our business, how we market the ideas that we've worked so hard to develop. And sometimes the only thing holding us back is how we are sharing that with the world. I also, you know, as I was looking through your bio and your introduction, your approach that combines, and you talk about combining deep listening, strategic thinking, and purposeful design. And the most important part there, I think, is deep listening. So many times, you know, I think we've all been in those situations where we hire someone to do some work for us, and they come in with a preconceived notion of what they're going to do. They kind of say, okay, this is what I'm doing for you. And you don't feel heard. So deep listening sounds like something a lot of people need to do more of. And especially in a field where you're coming in as the expert, I can see where it would be really easy to just jump in and say, here's what you got to do. But enough about you, and let's talk more about you. Tell us about, Lindsey, tell us about your work, what it is that's calling you to do what you do right now.
Okay. I work with faith-driven founders who are growing a business. They've been around a while. They've proven their model. They know who they're serving, but they're ready for growth and they don't know exactly what's getting in the way. I come in with strategy. A lot of them start with fragmented branding and they add on as it goes, almost like a kid with a Lego tower. You know, you don't always know what you're building when you're starting, and then it grows. But there comes a point in time that you have to come back and really examine that strategy, that foundation, and build it properly and iron out everything you need. So I come through, it isn't necessarily about getting a new logo or running a new campaign. What I do goes a lot deeper than that. We look at what is the foundation of your brand, of your business. What do you believe? What is inherent to who you are and why you do what you do? And then we look at, who do you serve? How do you serve them? How are they experiencing what you serve them? Do they understand your mission? Do they understand what you can do for them? And we build a language base and a brand base that helps everyone from your company who's in charge of those customer interactions to all have the same base they're drawing from. So we start with strategy. Then I come in and look at your visual identity and say, can we build the system better? And once we have that, we can look at your website and say, okay, let's build this in a way that when customers interact with you, they're getting the best of you and they're finding exactly what they need.
This is such important work, Lindsey, because when we look at attention spans today, right, we have only, and I'll let you speak, you're the expert, we only have a limited amount of time to catch someone's attention with our website, with our brand, whether it's our LinkedIn profile. I assume you work with not just the website, but also the social media and making sure we have one voice all across all platforms. Tell us a little bit about what is it, in your opinion, that's catching people's attention, and how much time do we have? I love getting that reality check that, people are clicking through your stuff pretty quickly.
It is way less time than you would think. I mean, people are making a decision within 3 seconds of landing on your website, whether you can help them or not. Mm-hmm. And they're not even doing that consciously, but they're soaking in the visuals, the colors, how structured it is, how long it takes for them to get the information out of you that they need. If your hero of your website doesn't clearly state who you help and how, they don't know that it's for them. And they lose attention. They click away. They may scroll a couple of paragraphs, but at that point, once they've already decided, I'm not sure, they're not totally soaking in all of your cues either. And then you move on to social media and LinkedIn, and you're only getting that one little hook. You get the first line or two on LinkedIn to catch their attention. You get just the first 5 seconds of a reel that you're posting. You really have to make those impressions matter. And the thing that I think we often overlook is it goes beyond first impressions, because you only get one of those. But if they continue to interact with you, if you show up on their feed every now and then, if they are coming back to your website to get more information, they're going to be paying attention to consistency too. Like, does my experience with you now match your experience before? Does something you're saying feel off base? Is it not consistent with what you said before? Does it even feel like it came from the same writer, the same voice, the same company, the same brand? So your first impressions they're pretty valuable, but also continuing to show up as who you are in an intentional way it just can't be understated.
You mentioned something really important, the hero of your website, right? So we've all heard of hero's journey, but the hero of your website, does it match your ideal client? And are you speaking to them in a way that makes them say, I want to click here? So tell us about that process. How do you find who the hero is for the website?
Yeah, sorry about that. The hero in web speak is just the term for the first part you see, right? When you like on a newspaper, it would be above the fold. It's the first thing you see, that first section. But you did speak right to the principles I like to follow with StoryBrand. Is your website isn't about you. You're not the hero of your story. Your customer is the hero of your story. So your language and how you present all of your materials should always be through that lens of, what can I do for you? Like, the reader should land on it and think, okay, I understand exactly how they help me. It's nice to know that you've won such and such awards, but how does that make you better at what you do? Like, how do I know that makes you the right person for me? I'd rather hear about how deeply you understand my problem, how much you know about the landscape and what you believe and how you work and who you stand on, so that those are things I'm going to experience when I work with you. So I need you to paint the picture for me as the reader, like very explicitly. I see me, I see you as the expert that's going to lead me where I need to go. And I can see how you're going to do that. Those are the most important things for people to be able to understand and interpret from your website.
Yeah, that is so good and so important, because often, and I want to definitely talk about this, it's not about us, it's about them, right? It's not about us as whether you're a coach or consultant or whether you're a brand strategist. It's not about you. Make the story about them. And the more you make it about them, the more likely you are to connect, because they are looking for connection. They're looking for a way to connect with you. This is really important work, as we've said already, but what led you into this work, Lindsey? What's your background and why are you doing it today? And who are the organizations you're working with?
Yeah, so I have a long history with advertising. I studied advertising in college, got my master's in it, and I worked in advertising agencies for about 17 years. So I worked in advertising agencies for about 17 years before I went off on my own to specifically study brand strategy and serve folks with that. I learned every role in the business. I learned copywriting. I learned, I'm a designer by nature, but I learned a lot about the strategy just sitting at the feet of the account executives and the, So I learned a lot about brand strategy, sitting at the feet of the account executives that were kind of guiding their clients and showing them, here's what is the structure for your business. And over 17 years, I really started to see patterns in companies that would show up with really good intentions and really good services that can help people so much, but they were showing up unsure of what to say. They didn't have their language right. They didn't have just the mindset of thinking big enough that I need to get my message out. And I was really called to help those people. There were a lot of really big corporate clients that we served, but my heart was for the founders who were showing up for their job as a calling. They didn't just see it as, this is the most profitable way for me to support my family. This is a way for me to make money. But they showed up with a passion for helping people, and they knew that what they were doing is what they were called to do. They received it as a calling through faith rather than just a business model they stumbled on YouTube. There's a difference in the leaders who lead that way. So that's why I left out on my own, because I wanted to have that complete control to work specifically with founders who were showing up intentionally on purpose, and they just needed a little help to get out of that growth model stage. They do okay usually getting there. Those first 3 years of business are always a challenge as a business owner, but you work through a lot of that. You work through, who do I serve? You work through, how do I serve them well? You figure out the systems that work for you. But then it's like, okay, how do I really scale this? How do I get to the next level? And at that point, when you've reached a revenue model that was bigger than you ever thought you could, but now you see what's possible and you really see that momentum and it's so close and you want to grasp it, but you just don't know what legs you're standing on and what's going to get you there. That's where I love to come in and really give them the foundation that they need to really ask the deep questions that pull out the answers from their brand that they never really even thought to explore. So that deep listening comes in there. It's yes, I do hear what they come to the table to say,
Right.
but I also ask the questions that they never really thought about and pull those answers out. And they're like, okay, now this person sees me, like they get who I am. And I know that they can tell my clients about me in a way that never would have come from AI. It never would have come from someone who just let me come and say, here's what I have. And they walked in with a preset notion. So that's where that deep listening comes in. And that's kind of what drew me to that, to serve this particular audience.
Yeah, Lindsey, you said a lot of really important things there. One is you're drawn to those, you have a heart for founders with a calling, because, I think we all struggle with that, especially if you're a faith-driven person. There, of course, we need to feed our families. Of course, we need to provide a roof over their heads, and we have to eat. Right? There's the things we need. We need to eat. We need shelter. We need food. We need water. We need oxygen. But those are minimal things. We can do that fairly easily. But you also say, okay, you're also working with those founders who are maybe in their second or third year. And you mentioned the first 3 years are the toughest. That first year you're a nonprofit and not by choice. Second year, maybe you grow your business and you make a profit, but it's still not paying the bills. That third year is really critical. And so you're coming in and you're saying, okay, I think you figure some things out. You're still in business after 3 years. I like where your heart is coming from. What is the most common issue that people are having in that third, fourth, fifth year of business, where they're established, they've got some clients, they've had some successes, and they've got to get the word out so they can get more. They probably have had some ideal clients that were really good paying and help pay the bills. We want to help them get more. What is the number one challenge that they normally have?
So a lot of them they're finding themselves a little bit fragmented. They knew what they were trying to do when they got started, but along the way, they figured things out that made their company better, which is a good thing. They've learned what services people really need. They've learned what audience really benefits from their services the most. And that may look different from how they started or what they expected. So along the way, they've added in social media. They said, hey, let's run a podcast. And now I've got this YouTube presence. And they've just kind of added on as opportunities came. And a lot of times they never looked back and said, okay, now these pieces don't all point in the same direction. They don't all align. They find themselves struggling with their words when they're asked, what do you do? Or who do you help? Like the things that should come instinctively, they feel like it takes a lot longer to explain because they have this whole journey that they've never really sat back and looked at and made sense of. So they need help figuring out, like boiling it down to the essentials of who is my company, what's important to us, like what's our foundation, what are our values, what are our philosophies, what do we believe, and how does that guide who we work? And then we step out from that and we think about who is your audience and how do they experience you? What are their problems? What are their influencers? Who do they take advice from? Where, what mind space are they in when they're encountering your messages? And then what is your competition saying? What else is out there, and how can you sound different from them? Mm-hmm. All of that comes together to figure out, how do we position you? How do we say what's important about you using the audience's language that they need to hear? And then once you have that worked out, these founders are able to say, okay, now I have this document that has all of the essentials in it. And every time I'm adding a new piece, if I want to run a new email drip campaign, if I want to add in a social media piece that I've never done before, and I don't know where to start on that, I come back to this document and this strategy, and I can say, okay, A, does it fit my model? Is my audience found on those channels even? And then B, if I'm doing this email thing, okay, what are the important things about this audience that I need to put in the front of my email list? Maybe I need to start calling out their problems first and helping them see how much I understand where they are. You're not starting from scratch every time with those new projects. You have this document that is your kind of true north. It's your guidance. Even internal decisions, even how fastly do I scale my company and how do I onboard clients? Like, your branding is internal too. It's how your employees feel when they work with you. And this strategy, this guide that you can start, can be the base of that too, so that you're never starting from scratch. You always have firm footing when you're trying to add something new or grow or make really important decisions. Even so important as, how do I respond to this war that's happening or this big political topic? What's on brand for my company, and what would be met with resistance versus what would be met openly, and how do I present that? All of that's going to happen a lot more smoothly when you have a strong base, like a firm foundation to stand on.
This sounds a lot more than just logos and colors, which is, when people think about brand, okay, I'm on brand. I have everything, all my colors match. I've got my logos. But what you're talking about when you talk about brand strategy, it's really a good foundation, right? Where you understand and everything is on the same page, because you're talking about, I love the fact that you brought up, how do you respond to something that happens either in pop culture or politically? There's things go on and people expect to hear from you. Are you gonna step out and say something, and does it match the audience that you're trying to reach? So tell us what more is there other than the colors and the logos? Tell us about that foundation. I think you've done a good job of, kind of getting into it, but
sure,
help us if we have no idea what brand strategy is. What are we looking for?
It's such a big term. It's the hardest thing about what I do, is just getting people to understand, what does branding even mean? And look, the logos and your visuals are important. They are important. They matter more than people think that they do, because it helps someone decide whether or not to trust you on that instant that they look at you. But what matters beyond that additionally is how you show up. How does your company show up in the world, in the marketplace, in the arena where your clients are? And that can be conflicting. If you have messaging in your ads saying we care about people, we are people driven, we're people first, and they get on the phone with your customer service agent and they have a very different experience there, that's dissonance. That sows distrust. That leads them with thinking, I don't know who this brand is. I can't trust them to deliver the same way every time. So maybe I don't really want to stay here. Maybe this isn't my zone, and they move on. So there's a lot that boils down to how you show up, and it's internal, it's external, it's within your company. It's how do you start your board meetings? It's how do you start new projects? How do you end them? Are you reflective as a company? Like, are you, and some are and some aren't, but it's good to know this is something we really believe in, is we're going to understand everything about how we do something. Well, that's part of your brand. That leans to your pillars. You have brand pillars that are going to run true, hopefully, about everything you do. We always are courteous. We always are innovative. We always are, and not to boil it down to buzzwords, but values that matter. Our integrity is always going to come first. Well, that plays out when you're adding a new product line. Does this fit with what we're offering, or is it just an easy opportunity for us to make money? Is this something our people really need? Is this something we want to add? And, you can check back to your brand strategy and who you are when you're making any of those decisions. So yes, they're going to see your logos. They're going to see your visuals. It's cool when your ads can look beautiful. It's a whole nother topic about how much beauty is needed in design and branding, and how all of that can be almost kind of formative for the faith-driven founder. But for all founders, it's important to know, yes, it's good to look professional. That's important. That might open some doors that you need opened. But when you get through those doors, what are all of the other ways that client is going to experience you in your wording, in your demeanor, in your offers, how they're structured, in how organized you are, in their client portal when they're dealing with your work and they're kind of mid-project, even after you've gotten the contract and they're mid-project with you. That's all still got to be true to your brand, so that they can know that they can trust you. It really all comes down to trust. People work with people they know, like, and trust is probably the biggest factor there.
You mentioned the importance of, telling, I think, I keep coming back to the transcendental desires: truth, goodness, and beauty, right? So you want to be on brand. You want to match so that people don't think, well, where are you? What is your real truth? What is the truth? Goodness. Oh, what can you do for me? How can you help me? Is this good for my business? And then the beauty, right? We're going to be attracted to a good looking, well-organized website that explains the problem in a simple way that allows me to see myself working with Lindsey and saying, okay, Lindsey gets me. I need her help. And you don't know what a great job you're doing, even with me as you're talking. I'm like, we need Lindsey, right? We Why Not Leadership needs to work with Lindsey, because I can see that growth that we're having. And does that website that we designed 2 years ago match what we are doing today? So, and that's a good question. How can you tell when you've outgrown your brand? There's
Yes.
probably a tension that you feel. Tell us about that.
There is. And beauty, the beautiful websites that you maybe you started with beauty, and maybe that's not even something you need to grow into. But if it's not built on strategy, it's still not going to serve its purpose. So a lot of times the way that shows up is you hesitate before you give out your business card or send people to your website. You find yourself almost apologizing for the way your proposal looks when you send it. It can look like getting client inquiries that don't match your services. They either aren't ready for the investment level of what you offer now, or they think you do something else, or they're just not your best client fit. They're not the personality that you work best with. They show up unwilling to learn, or when you're attracting the wrong kinds of people, or you struggle to break into the level of client that you really know you can serve well, but you just don't know how to verbalize that. Those are all common symptoms. You can just feel scattered. Sometimes it's just a feeling. Sometimes it's, I just don't feel like you stop getting excited when you see your own website, and it just becomes background noise to you. And it's probably something you see often, so you don't notice it as much, but it's usually an internal tension that we don't ever really attribute to any certain cause. But when you look at that, it's there. And often, sometimes this is difficult for founders because they can become pretty emotionally attached to what they started with, and they feel like they're being disloyal to what got them where they are by changing it. Particularly a faith-driven founder who has named their business after some very specific faith symbol or Bible verse or element that really motivated them when they were getting started. And that maybe kept them going in the beginning was, okay, I'm constantly being reminded of my purpose by the name of this, but it's worth looking back at. Is that symbolism and significance as apparent to your audience as it is to you? And if not, let's fix that. Let's present that same concept in a way that's relevant to your audience and reflective of the caliber of what you're offering now. You don't have to lose the meaning of what you started with. You shouldn't. And sometimes a rebrand is just truly a refresh. It's taking your same concept, but cleaning it up, making it look polished, taking away the 2020 curved corner boxes. There are definitely trends in design that can date you and inadvertently make you look outdated. But beyond that, it's really a matter of taking what you have that's true from when you started and distilling that into something that better reflects where you are now. So for founders who really struggle with, I like what I started with, someone I love made it for me, or it really means a lot to me. I named this after my daughter because that's who I do this for. Okay, that really served you well in the beginning, but as you enter that next growth phase, let's look at how that is interpreted by the audience and the rest of the world in which your brand operates, and see if we can make those experiences match. Can we make that experience of what you knew when you started match what is true now and what your audience needs to hear to be able to be receptive to what you're bringing to the table.
A couple of things came to mind. Thank you for that answer, Lindsey. I had Marshall Goldsmith on, and he wrote the book, What Got You Here Won't Get You There. So I think you're mentioning that, right? What gets you to a certain point gets you there. But if you want to go to the next level, there's some things that you've got to change. So while it worked to get to X, you need to get to Y and to Z, and there's going to be some changes that you're going to make. Now, this is a leadership podcast. So help us understand how having a brand strategy that is aligned, how does having a good brand strategy actually help the leader lead better?
I'm really glad you asked that. It doesn't seem like it would on the surface, but when you look at how a leader has to spend his time, as they grow, leaders need to be able to delegate more. They need to be able to have confidence in their team to handle the things that they're used to doing so that they can free themselves up to do the bigger picture thinking and the bigger picture things. Having a brand strategy makes that so much easier. The expectations are clear. It's almost like a how to do it document for the other people who need to do the things that the founder always starts out doing. Who's going to be on the sales calls? Who's going to, who's going to write the blog post? Who's going to do all of the things that maybe take up a lot of time? And even if it stays with the founder and there's not a team to speak of, you as a leader need to make room for the leadership things on your deck. And some of these other things that you have to do can be streamlined, made simpler, and take up a lot less of your time when you have a formula and a foundation that you're starting from. Founders shouldn't be spending all of their time in base level operations. They should be elevating that and either backfilling people to do those jobs for them, or just using less time to do that. And having a strategy helps you do that too. It also helps you lead in the way of being a good steward of your time, your team's time, because tasks that are hard for you might also be hard for them. And you want to simplify that, but it's also being a good steward of the talents and the gifts that God has given you. The reasons that you formed this business, if you can't articulate them clearly to the public, if people can't find you when they need your services, if people don't know you exist, or they don't know you're the right one for them, they're never going to get helped. And that minimizes your impact. And that over time can chip away at your confidence as a leader. It is important to believe in what you offer. And when your company is consistently being met with resistance, and if you feel like growth is harder than it should, you have to protect your mind space, because that's where doubt creeps in. That's where you start to wonder, did I get it right? Am I really called to do this? Did I mess up somewhere a year or two ago? And can I even recover from that? Like that doubt that comes in, that has to be guarded against. As founders, you have to actively push that aside. And it is easier to do that when you have spent the time building that foundation, saying, yes, I've discerned this a lot more clearly. And I know I'm doing what I'm called to do. I just have to find the right way. I just have to find a different way and keep iterating until I get there. So it helps you be a lot more efficient, and it helps you be a good steward of your team. It helps you trust your teammates better when you're delegating, but it also helps you as a leader lead from a place of confidence. And that, I think, is often overlooked. I think it's a lonely world as a founder when you feel like the whole company's on your shoulders and you feel like this mission is so big and I was trusted with it. That's a heavy feeling. And if you can't build up a support system for yourself for that, you might waver a bit. So it's worth the time to sit there and just take a strong look at, what am I building? Why am I building it? What's important, and what has to always stay true no matter how big we grow. And once you know those things, then all of those other problems just start feeling smaller, and you just start feeling more prepared for them.
Wow. Thank you. Really good. Again, motivational and inspirational. One of the things that comes to mind when you talk about working with that ideal client, I recently read The Three Ordinary Voices of God by Matthew Kelly. And he gives an example. I think it was that. Gives an example of a guy who is dating someone. And they've been dating for 3 years. So he asks him the question, hey, is she the one? And he says, no, she's not. And he's like, well, wait a minute. You've been dating her for 3 years. What if she's not the one? Are you planning on having a conversation and breaking up with her? He's like, no, we get along great. We have fun together. but she's just not the one. And he says, okay, well, what are you doing this week? And he says, well, we're going to the movies. We're going to go see the new movie that came out. And the example he uses is, think about the fact that while you're at the movies with this person who's not the one, you're going to miss out on maybe this Friday was the night you were going to meet the one, but you're spending it with the wrong person. And so you're not available. You're obviously not available because you're with someone else. So there's no opportunity for you to connect. And I see that with clients too, right? We have to, all that time we're spending with the wrong client who doesn't see the value in what we do. And Marshall talked about this in the interview. He says, to the extent that you have to pay the bills and make money, you might take a client or two that aren't a great fit. But that time that you're spending with that client that's not a great fit, that doesn't appreciate what you do, isn't putting in the work, because I know there's work involved in working on your brand. That's time you could have spent with an ideal client who sees your value, is willing to pay your full price. So what are your thoughts on that kind? Because I see you also as someone who wants to help those heart-led founders. So how do you discern who you work with when perhaps maybe they don't meet all the criteria, but you see that they're a heart-led leader and they're faith-filled and they've got a good concept, so you want to help them? How do you get away from that person that person in your heart that just wants to help, but know that maybe they're not ready for you?
That is really on target with what I've been going through myself in my own business lately. It is a challenge because most of us who start our business because we care, you don't stop caring. It doesn't get turned off. And it took me a while to realize in my own business the same, that I'm spending a lot of time on very small projects and small clients. But I know that it took me realizing how much bigger my impact could be when the project scope was bigger, when the client I'm helping was ready to invest, when they came with a mindset of, I see how important this is and I'm willing to do the work. Just like you said, it does take a lot of work, a lot of introspection to do something like a brand strategy through my process and really just at all. But it is difficult to turn down a good in order to hold out for a better. But what helped me was realizing that if I am being true to my calling, I have to trust that there are others out there being true to theirs, and that there is someone whose calling right now is to help that client. I have to trust that if I'm not what they need, because they can't, when my clients that I take on can't afford my true rates, and I end up either cutting my rates or minimizing my project or cutting time off of the deliverables, they're not getting the best out of me. I'm not delivering what I can do at my best because I'm distracted the whole time trying to figure out, okay, well, if I cut my rates for this, what other project do I have to take on to make up for that? And I end up taking on too many clients at one time and I'm spread thin. So they're not getting the best of me anyway. So instead of us who aren't a good fit continuing to work together, I can look into who can I refer you to? What DIY resources would be appropriate for you right now? What level of, maybe we shift to just a consulting model where we do a monthly phone call and I can guide you on what you're doing with these other people and just kind of touch base that way, but I'm not doing the hands-on work. I've had to look at other models for helping the people who are not my best fit so that I am free to take on people who have all of the resources and who are exactly right for what I do.
Yeah, that is key advice, because as you said, I always say this, I can't discount. It's hard for us to discount our services, because I think for you and for anybody who is a professional, it's hard to give less than 100%. So if you're paying me 80%, I'm probably still going to give you 100%. And if I'm giving you 100% and you're paying me 80%, I'm probably going to be a little resentful. And now that brings on something, a completely different way that we're working together. Yeah. And especially if I'm putting in the extra work, which, I know you took the YOS discovery, Lindsey. I see that contribute side of you so much, that wants to make a difference. So as a contributor, that's your what. We have to fight that. And one of the things that I coach people with the why of contribute on is work on things that make a big difference, because we get energy from that, right? That makes us feel good, makes us feel like we're making a difference. But if we're spread thin because we've said yes to too many things, we're making a little difference in a lot of places and not a big difference in any one place. So really, I can see that that struggle there for sure. Lindsey, tell us about your Catholic faith and how it shapes the way you approach your work and these tough decisions, because you have to make business decisions, but you want to do them through a lens that is true to your faith also. So tell us about that process. And
Yeah.
again, I think this is helpful for leaders to hear.
I do lean heavily on my faith. By nature, what I do is big thinking type stuff. It's big picture. It takes discernment. So I lean on to discernment a lot. I shape my business that way. When I'm working with clients, I do not ask for answers the day of. I do not encourage people to rush their thinking or their decisions or even their proposals. I want people to spend time in prayer or in deep reflection, if that's not what they do, but in deep reflection of what is right now and how can I tell? So when I'm discerning a project to work on, when I'm trying to figure out what's my next step marketing wise, like what messages do I need to be putting out, I lean pretty heavily into prayer on that. I have a non-negotiable every Friday afternoon holy hour that I go to, and it's intentional. I go to my Adoration Chapel and I start by praying for my clients individually by name, past clients, current clients, whoever I feel like needs it. And then I spend the rest of the time thinking intentionally about my business. Am I living up to my calling? What has changed this week? What new opportunities are in front of me that I didn't see before? So I really think that it is introspection and it is taking time and being reflective. Like I try not to let my business happen on accident. And the only way I can do that is if I've taken the time to stop and really think about that. And for me, the best way to do that is in prayer. And so that is what I do. But I also lean onto it pretty heavily, like just the journey of being a business owner. I don't know how people who are not of faith do it. Like, I don't know how they stick to it, because there are so many times where you just feel overwhelmed and helpless and drowned out and paralyzed by all the options or decisions you have to make. So I from the very beginning of my entrepreneurship journey, I mean, I've been doing what I do a long time, but yes, my business is on the younger side. I'm 4 years out from when I started. So that's a different element there. And my faith has grown so much just from trusting, just from the trust that you have to have if you're going to move forward. I think that every time I did it scared, it was because of the trust that I had in God's plan that it would all work out. I know He didn't pull me out of agency for nothing. And I know He didn't pull me out of agency work to play it small.
I love it. So
knowing that I have taken the time to listen to what He's telling me to do helps me trust with so many things in my business. It helps me on proposals. Like when I am nervous about making a pitch, am I the right fit for this person? Do I check all the boxes of what they need? Would I need to pull on extra talent? If so, who? Like when I look at all of that, I have to remind myself, if I'm working with founders who are as intentional about their business as I am, I have to trust that somewhere along the line, if they are thinking about it as hard as I am, God will tell them I'm not the right person or that I am. So I don't come with fear when I'm not sure if I'm the right person or if I can deliver or if my timeline is right, which is, it's on the rarer side. But if I get something that's like way out of the lane of what I normally do, and I'm like, okay, I'll propose it. And I know that if they accept it, it's because it was the right thing for both of us. And that gives me the confidence to lean forward and say, okay, let's figure this out. Let's pull in the resources we need to make this a right fit for you. So having that faith does take away fear for me.
You know, I just interviewed, and you guys will air close to each other, Kent Chevalier. He's the chaplain for the Pittsburgh Steelers.
Oh, cool.
And you mentioned a phrase. He wrote a book called Do It Afraid. And the topic is around, you have to trust. If it's worth doing, you sometimes have to put your trust in God. I love that you have a dedicated holy hour every week. I think we all should pray for I think you said your past clients, current clients, and future clients, right? Mm-hmm. So we're praying for those people that are keeping our business alive, and our employees and our teams and the vendors we work with. I think that's a beautiful thing, and it's a great way to incorporate your faith into everything that you do. Um, the topic of the show is branding with purpose. What does branding with purpose mean, Lindsey?
Okay. That's a good segue into how branding ties into living your purpose out solidly. So branding with purpose, it really speaks a lot to having the foundation built. A lot of brand designers are brand designers, and they're going to take what you give them information wise, a brief, say, or a request for this is what we have in mind, and they're going to design that, and they can build that, and that is good. It is okay. But it isn't the same caliber as what happens when you are doing everything with intention, when you're looking at what emotions do my clients need to feel when they see my logo or when they land on my website, when they read the language there. What do they need to feel to make them confident in this decision and saying a yes to me? And it's not in a manipulative way, but it's in a way that how can I make them feel the most seen so that they know that I can help them? And it's looking at, okay, what I can get really technical with design elements and how you can make people feel things by how the things that they're looking at are shaped and formed and line thickness. Like there's a lot that good designers can do. Can do with all of that. But branding with purpose is really about owning who you are, knowing who you are as a company, as a founder, owning that and committing yourself not to straying from it so that your entire brand, every touch point, every customer interaction, your logo, your website, your copy, your brochures, your pitch decks, everything should reflect, all of that should reflect who you are as a company in some way. So when you're branding with purpose, you're doing it on purpose. You're making sure that, okay, this might be a 3-hole punch SOP for my internal team. How can I make it on brand? How can I make it reflect who we are? Is it just a tagline that goes on the bottom? Maybe that reminds them of our purpose. Is it, what can I do with everything I'm putting out that's going to help all of us stay true to who we are? And that's going to help the customers experience who we are in a very consistent way that helps them feel seen and understood and helps them know that they are the exact right client for me and that I can help them better than I even could other people, or that you are the best help for them outside of your competition. It's doing all of that intentionally. You can't succeed at that if you're not doing it intentionally. So rebranding with purpose is when you're coming to the marketplace with a mission. And this doesn't have to just be like a mission as in that's your business. Like it doesn't have to be a faith-based business. Right. I work with a lot of faith-based founders who are running a law firm or they own a plumbing company. They're secular in nature, but they want to run it in a way that's foundational to their faith. And those are ways that you can incorporate that, what's true to you, into all of your customer experiences and letting that purpose shine through, even if it's not specifically saying the words, "Hi, I'm Catholic, you should hire me because of that." I, in fact, do not recommend saying those words at all. That's not a strong pitch. Right. But when people can see your commitment to truth, when your goodness is showing through, when you're making decisions based on integrity, even if it might cost you a little bit of money, when people see those things out of your brand, they know what you stand for. And they know, okay, that's something I can expect from this brand because you've done it on purpose, with purpose.
Yeah, I love that you said with purpose and on purpose. That's I just talked to someone else. James Madison was on the podcast recently, and he talks about living life on purpose, and branding on purpose. Let's do, I would love to ask you one more question.
Sure.
This has to do with stewardship, right? How does branding help you steward your talents and do the best with what you've been given, whether you believe that was God that gave it to you or it's just a natural gift that you have and you've got to maximize it to help people using your talents, right? Let's answer that question, because I think once again, we think about marketing and branding. It's like, oh yeah, whatever, we need to do that. No, this is important, and tell us why.
I feel really strongly about this. Branding as stewardship was one of the earliest pillars I latched onto because I just feel passionately that you you were given your gifts for a reason. And people who have built a business to the level of the people I work with, they know that. They know, they're aware of that. They got to that point because they knew they had those gifts and they did go to the efforts to employ them. But when you aren't either marketing yourself at all, when you're playing small, that's just it. If you were founding a business because of a mission, a calling, you were not made to play small. You were not made to shrink back. I know that it can be perceived as humility by not, I don't want to go talk about myself or market too much because I feel like I need to run this business in a humble way. Fine, be humble. That's great. But humbleness does not mean invisibility. Visibility is stewardship because you are helping people find you when they need you the most. If you have a heart for doing good, whether that's fixing someone's sink when it breaks in the middle of the night, or whether it's leading them in a different prayer life or helping them run their business better, whatever it is, the purpose that you're called to. Yeah. If you're not talking about that in a clear way, in an attractive way, and in a way that everybody can access, then how are they going to know who you are and what you do? How are they going to know that you can help them? How are they going to know when they're in? And you have to do that continuously because they don't always find you when they're in the need. They found you before and they have to remember you when they're in a time of need and know that your services are exactly the right fit. So stewarding your business well means talking about it early, often, consistently, with the right language, all of the things that branding is. So if you're running your business and you're not thinking about branding, it's an afterthought. And a lot of people don't. It's not something that they're naturally drawn to, especially like tech people or people who are in the medical field. Like they do what they do really well. They've often never given a thought to marketing or branding. That's just something other people do.
Right.
But it's inherent to being a good business leader is to knowing how are you telling people about what you do? How are you going to serve people? How can you even make an impact if people can't find you? So, or if when they find you, they find confusion and they can't really tell who you're for or what you do. And they just think maybe this isn't for me. Right. So branding is stewardship of your talents. It's kind of like the guy in the Bible who buried this talent to keep it safe because he wanted to play it safe, whereas the others are going out and making more of it. If you want to keep your thing small and safe and not talk about it a whole lot, okay, you're still going to have that talent, but it's not growing.
Right.
So
you're not multiplying it and you're not applying it, right?
Yeah.
Love that. Lindsey, that was a great answer. It's every time I asked you a question, you came up with some brilliant answers. I know there's some great nuggets in this interview. So I want to thank you for sharing your thoughts, sharing your knowledge. I think you've got so much knowledge, and I'm so glad that you were with us here today. I know we're going to put your contact information in the show notes so that we can help more people find new life for good friends, for good brands. What's the best way for people to get a hold of you?
The best way to get a hold of me is on my website. I'll have a form for booking a consult call, and I'm happy to discuss any potential needs for founders who are in this situation. But you can also find me on LinkedIn. And even if you're just wanting to connect and not necessarily about a project, LinkedIn's the best place for me.
Fantastic. So we'll find you, Lindsey Binion, and on LinkedIn. And then I was able to find her. We connected through a couple of connections that we have in common. Lindsey, it has been an absolute pleasure. Guys, if you're listening and you learned something from Lindsey, make sure you comment, make sure you share, make sure you like, subscribe to the channel so that we can get this message out to as many people as possible. And Lindsey, what do you say we end the show on that note?
Yes, why not?
Thank you so much for being on, Lindsey. Guys, we'll see you next week on another episode of the Lead Different podcast. Have a great weekend.
This is Lead Different.
Subscribe now. Discover a new era of leadership. Lead different because great leaders change the world.